Joining me today on Startup Report are the team from Hive Learning. Welcome. We have Fred Moss, Julia Tierney, and RJ Jacques. Good to see you. Thanks for stopping by.
Good to see you.
So you're here because some folks from Hive Learning are relocating, or you're bringing a presence here to St. Petersburg. We're excited about that. Welcome. And first, let's dig into understanding what Hive Learning is, and we'll go from there. So, Julia, you want to give us the 101?
Of course. So Hive Learning, we specialise in culture change at scale. So typically we work with quite big, complicated corporates that find driving change at pace really hard. Obviously, the last year has been an amazing time for the changing world, and most big corporates are facing a time where they have to be pretty agile and change in quite big ways. So it's a really good time for us, and what we do is we're a learning platform, peer learning platform that will enable us to, through social media style experience with nudge theory and network effects, we basically can drive change at a rapid pace really effectively.
That's great. And obviously, I would assume the technology piece of that is probably the easiest. The psychology piece of that is kind of the hardest, understanding the behavior and how you can engineer in the behaviors that you want. Fred, can you give us a little overview on how that process was developed?
Well, it comes back to where we originally founded the company, which ultimately is bred in sort of high performance, and actually we have a bit of a sports heritage to what we do. But ultimately, where we go with peer learning is that it's extremely accountable, basically. So the technology is making you aware of what other people are doing with their learning, what other people are doing with ultimately whatever this culture change is for the organization. And so by bringing that awareness to multiple people, we get lots of people engaging with it and understanding how to drive that forward. Actually, the psychology or the behavioral aspects can be quite simple. It could just be about practical steps of what you can do towards whatever this culture change is. So good examples, we work really closely in the diversity and inclusion world. And a lot of people are mostly just afraid of that topic because it's kind of big in the air and it's political, or it's things that people don't necessarily want to sort of put the foot wrong in. So we just break that down into simple steps. Here's the ways that you could run a meeting today inclusively, introduce everyone in the meeting, or, break it down just into simple, easy steps to manage.
And then the visibility part's the really important bit. So the thing that people haven't done in learning is bring the kind of what makes social media so effective into the learning space. So that visibility of seeing your peers interact, like FOMO, fear of missing out. Our engineers have above their desks a big poster saying tickle their FOMO, and it's very much part of our product philosophy, because very early on we could see that the more people interacting with the platform that were connected to each other, the more traction we got and more habitual learning that happens. So that kind of I guess what I think our magic sauce is why we're really excited is actually called about FOMO and also FOBSMO, so that the fear of being seen to be missing out, that dynamic of a social network applied to a culture change environment is really effective and why we do pretty well.
And sort of one of the elements of social media that makes that possible is it feels like it's a bottom up, right? It's coming from the peers, coming from your peers. So when you look at a topic like diversity and inclusion, you're setting the ball in motion with the platform and with the intention, and then at what point then do you start to leverage other people's content or the Hive's content to create that bottom up feel?
Yeah, so we work on kind of we have like 4 practices where we're like specialists in content creation, because what we realized about 4 years ago, we started working with corporates. We're an empty platform that's really great at peer learning and peer learning programs. And even some of the best corporates out there, you'd be amazed at how rubbish their content really is, quite often learning content. The amount of times that we've had to upload like a 10-year-old PowerPoint presentation, and you're like, this isn't how people learn anymore, and it's not interesting, it's not bite-sized, it's not provocative. So generally, a lot of the work we do, customers come and like cherry pick kind of the pathways and the conversation starters from our library. And then the really important part is we blend it with their stuff. So it feels like theirs, it's their tone of voice. We do actually a lot of leadership and management training as well, which is more of that kind of blended approach. We kind of call it the BYO program. We're the specialists in getting it active and making it work and making it a peer learning environment. So there's always, it is top down, it's designed top down. It absolutely is designed to get the outcomes businesses want, but the secret part of it is making it feel bottom up and actually making sure it really genuinely is. So the D&I programs that we run where there isn't the genuine mandate and interest from the top, you get this brilliant peer learning conversation happening and activity, but if the top aren't listening and understanding really what people want, where they're getting stuck, where the changes need to be made, then you don't really get the impact that we're looking for. So it's kind of top to bottom to top again is the secret.
That's a great point, because you can have the bottom up and make that great win, but if it doesn't go up enough, then it sort of loses some of its power.
We end up creating this really amazing listening tool, basically, but you have to make sure people are interested in the data to really, if they genuinely want to get to the impact, which is another unique thing about our company, I guess we're really like impact focused. So to get there, they have to be willing to take the data, take the insights and drive it forward.
Makes a lot of sense. So RJ, you're a content expert. You looked at content and how it's received by the masses from a lot of different angles. What's unique about Hive's content, and what do you sort of look for as a an indicator of success as the content flows around the platform?
I think that when it comes to a lot of learning, people can get oversaturated by having to sit through very long videos or read through really long books and chapters. And what I think is really innovative about this is that it's very snackable. The lessons can be picked up in a minute, 2-3 minutes. The ability to share with other individuals helps that kind of those lessons permeate a large culture. I also think the amount of quantitative data that we gather to help better deliver another experience helps to make the platform measurably improve over time. So it's a mixture of its ability to be consumed quickly, to be spread out evenly and dispersed, and to be measured. That really lends its power.
That's great. So, and as you have to go in and sort of work against the forces of traditional coursework and some of the stuff, the mind-numbing stuff that RJ referred to, have people, has corporate leadership been kind of open to that, or do you feel like there's some behavior change at that level too?
I mean, I would say over the history of most like corporate learning that has taken place, it was never necessarily like a necessity that was happening for the business success in, say, I'm talking the last 30, 40 years. It was mostly happening because we knew that we needed to give people learning, and that was part of the sort of the game plan. And actually, I wouldn't say this is not just happening in the last few years, but the external impacts, basically the things that we're seeing in the kind of cultural impacts of organization, what we've started to see is that sort of dynamic between employer and employee changing. It's starting to become far more a requirement that you are responsible, as me as an employee, for you to develop me and sort of start to deliver something on my plate that's going to be actually valuable to my long-term professional development. So the dynamic started to shift. And then what we also saw was just large-scale world events, and a great one to pinpoint like the pandemic and what we're currently going through. These are, again, like huge moments of shift for, if I'm a leader, how do I behave? How do I even run a team that I'm never going to meet? And how do I have the skills to do that when that happened overnight? So all of these sorts of things, I think, are at play, where then the old school ways of doing it, like you can't even book a training course in time to be able to equip your leaders with pandemic skills of like how to run virtual meetings. Like that's just, by then the targets have moved and it's all shifted. Yeah. You need something so much more agile, so much more, again, like bottom up, something where you can understand what you need, what skills are lacking, and immediately address that. And perhaps not address it in the usual ways, which, a virtual session is sometimes good, but there's just as much good content out there that can be consumed and sort of broken down into ways that you can practically put it forwards.
Yeah, that's great. And what I hear you saying is maybe there's a little bit of a shift in the balance of power in where now because the world is open, people are working remotely. Some of those locks that people had on with geography to say, hey, here's the big company in the best spot now, that those kind of go away. And one of these sort of side benefits of an enterprise like Hive is that the roots, because it feels bottom up, the roots are a little bit deeper, and you might get this nice cultural glue that happens as people move to be more remote. Is that fair?
Yeah, there's two really interesting things happening, right? Most big organizations are having to go through rapid change right now to readjust to the new world and operate, keep ahead of competition, to keep the top talent. Like you'll have heard the war for talent, it's very evident it's there. the number one reason people leave a job isn't actually money, even though you see a lot about the crazy salaries that people are getting now, is actually culture, particularly sort of Gen Z, the younger generations. If they don't feel like an organisation is true to its values, then that's the number one reason they'll leave. So you've got this interesting thing happen where organisations are needing to change really quickly, but at the same time, the dynamics of the power shift is real, and people want a different experience from their employer, and that's changed. So those two things together is what's created quite a unique opportunity for us where we can move fast too. The amount of L&D leaders or HR leaders that we talk to that used to sort of spend 2 years planning a piece of leadership training, and like Fred said, by the time they've rolled it out the door, it's almost like definitely out of date now. So they're having to, like, agile HR is a thing, it's a trend, and some companies are better at it than others. Like traditionally, actually the really big traditional ones aren't very good at it, and it feels quite uncomfortable to your point of your question. So we're kind of there as the partner to help them through that. So actually we become, one of my favourite quotes from a customer recently was, you leave HR better than when you find it. So we're pretty niche, we know what we're doing, we know how to affect change in digital world, and people use us as both a platform but also a team to make that happen.
Yeah, that's great. Well, I do want to talk a little bit about the origin of the company. You're a few years in now. You were built through Venture Builder, Blenheim Chalcott, which has actually also moved to St. Pete, and you're kind of here following that lead. So can you give us a quick overview of how the company started and sort of the growth trajectory since then?
So I was one of the founding team, right? So we were founded by Sir Clive Woodward, who won't mean a lot to you here, but in the UK, he's like kind of a big deal in that he's like our only sports coach really that's taken our country to sort of any big sporting success on the world arena. So we won the Rugby World Cup like 20 years ago. When we started the company, it was 10 years ago, so it's still quite fresh. And he is the famous coach from our country, and he was a teacher by trade. He has a really interesting coaching methodology, which actually stems from peer learning. So a lot of the, his books and a lot of the literature and articles written about him then, he actually got a lot of stick for it at the time because he would spend as much time with the players in the room as he would on the pitch, and he'd give them homework assignments and they'd go off and do stuff and bring it back to each other. And so there was always this kind of peer accountability of them feeling responsible to each other. And he always knew there was something really important about that. And then as he went on, he was actually the director of Team GB for the Olympics. So we had a particularly good Olympics in 2012. And again, he basically went to every single sport in the Olympics and went to every single team in the back room. And he connected them to each other in a way that they could learn from each other. So again, that kind of peer learning environment and sort of how he did it with the World Cup, he brought that into kind of English sport. And he was really famous for, having a CEO and a senior person from the army sat in the back of his coaching room when we'd do a session, and they'd give him feedback and ideas. And he sort of always pioneers the idea. He's very humble, but he sort of says, none of these ideas are mine. I just get great people around me and then make sure we listen. So I guess actually that's where diversity and inclusion has become a really big part of us too. So he had this philosophy for how people learned really effectively, and then we built it into a platform. So back in 2013, he was literally sat around a dinner party table with the guys behind Blenheim Chalcott, so Manoj Badali and Charles Mindenhall, and they were obviously interested and said, hey, let's give this a go. But do you know what? We think it might be really interesting in the corporate market as well, sport, but let's start with sport. So I started with the team. I think we had like 4 engineers. We were doing a prototyping. We managed to sell our first contract to the Olympics, which was actually, I'm not sure it was a good thing. Most startup stories about like failing fast and being able to learn from your mistakes. We did not have that opportunity. We had to launch for an Olympic Games within 6 months. And it really took off in sport, right? So then Fred came on soon after that, and we won kind of the Premier League, which is obviously the biggest football organisation. So we pretty much won most of the big sports bodies around Europe, and we were doing pretty well. And then we realised we could be a couple of £1 million company, like $5 million company, but actually we think there's something more powerful in this. So that's when we started to work in the corporate market, probably about 5 years ago, and basically learnt since then that our professional services were really important, and then content was really important. And so as we've grown, we've built all this stuff into what is now today Hive Learning, specialising in big corporate culture change.
That's great. And how has the service mix expanded? You mentioned it being in demand on a couple different fronts. So obviously you have the core platform programming, and what else has sort of bloomed out of that?
Yeah, so we're about 80% recurring revenue business, and of that, about 80% is platform and 20% is kind of professional services. So people will buy a subscription bundle from us to help them run their their learning as well as using the platform itself. And then occasionally we do like one-off professional services projects. And, we're trying to get work out how comfortable we are. Like we obviously want to be a platform business, and actually the content comes as part of the platform subscription. But actually we've just realized that it doesn't matter how brilliant a content is, how brilliant a platform is, stuff just doesn't work unless you have the right know-how to how to launch it, how to do great marketing around launching it. And we use as much as the marketing team in our learning as we do in our marketing, because actually that's half of what it's about. So that's the sort of blend, is basically anyone and everyone around network science, nudge theory, marketing, comms. Like we bring in all that expertise to do the best job we can.
That's great. Sounds like a nicely iterative process. And Fred, then you came in to launch the US?
So I joined a little bit before then, in our sort of earlier days where we were building out the corporate market, which is where my sort of background came from, and expanded that into the UK. We've been doing all sorts of different commercial roles in that kind of sense. And then about 4 years ago, although we had clients here in the US, it made sense to sort of start putting some feet on the ground. So I moved to New York, actually, which is where I'm currently based, and started out sort of just a very small, lightweight team in the sort of classic Learning.mp4 style way, which is not to sort of overextend ourselves too quickly. We need to sort of test the market, see what people are reacting to first. And around about that time was also as we were sort of really scaling up our diversity and inclusion program, which is Inclusion Works. And that started to really snowball. So within 4 months, we had sort of 6 clients on the books ready to launch pilots, which was at least, sort of 3 or 4 times quicker than what we'd found in the UK market at that time. And then from there, it was just a scale-up journey, really. I think the reason why we've just scaled up so much quicker in the last year has mostly been down to a bit of external environmental sort of factors of the culture of the US and what's been going on. But also, actually, as we've grown ourselves, we have learned what's really applicable to the US audience. We've learned the different cultural sort of nuances that we found. Actually, even some of our clients that we're launching here are globally based, but need both global versions of what we're doing as well as a US focused version. So there's a lot of sort of nuances in what we then deliver, both in diversity and inclusion, but leadership, mental health, all the way through to things like sustainability, which we're sort of scaling up as we talk. So there's all sorts of sort of plays at heart right now.
That's great. And holding down the fort in St. Pete, RJ joined the team, about a year ago?
No.
Just a little, 6 months
or so.
Yeah. It's part of the furniture now.
That's a compliment in the UK. Yeah. And so Blenheim Chalcott, which is a really interesting model, and we're going to have some folks in from there in the future to dig into that. But essentially, a venture builder in that they go through the process of funding startups, but usually startups they've generated, which is really neat, and we're happy to have them in St. Pete, currently located in 200 Central there, and that's where you work out of, RJ, when not working from home. Yeah, it's wonderful.
And building a team around it, and we've got 10 people out of the office now. We've just, as of this week, as of the last 2 weeks ago.
So the scale in the last sort of 6 months has doubled the headcount of the US team, but in particular here in Tampa and St. Pete area is just, we feel like this is a good focus area for both the sort of work-life balance that people want right now, but at the same time having a hub that people want to come to and meet each other.
Yeah, I can vouch for that. It's a great place to live. Sometimes the life balance is a little heavier because it's so great here. But and RJ, how many folks do you think you'll end up with here, say, in a year, and out of the St. Pete office?
Well, we're hoping to fill the office that we currently have. We're looking for SDRs and a variety of other people to join the marketing team as well as content. We always have a insatiable need for content. So, we're looking for people here, looking into the university and other professional individuals here in the tech community, and want to kind of assemble a really great power team and grow this like other great startups here.
That's awesome. Well, we appreciate it. Welcome. Thanks for stopping by and sharing the story, and we'll look forward to following along and supporting you as you grow here in St. Pete and in the U.S. and in the world.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.